Alright, so imagine this moment when the lights of Hollywood glimmer just a little softer. And behind that golden glow stands Blake Lively, a woman who has built not only a career but a world around authenticity, grace and quiet power, and as whispers of new conversations about transparency and truth ripple through the industry. Her team steps forward not to stir the noise, but to remind everyone of the power of integrity, because in this ever-shifting landscape where rumors and headlines collide, Blake has always been the calm in the storm, choosing kindness over chaos and class over confrontation. And that is what makes her one of those rare figures who can command attention without ever needing to raise her voice. Her story unfolds, not as one of scandal, but of strength. A reminder that in Hollywood, the truest kind of fame is the kind that endures, because it is built on heart and purpose from her early days on the set of Gossip Girl when she was just another young talent with big dreams to her evolution into one of the most admired women in film, fashion, and philanthropy. Blake's journey has always been about finding balance, about holding on to herself, even when the spotlight could have easily swallowed her whole. She has turned her platform into something meaningful, advocating for causes that matter, supporting young designers, uplifting women in business, and reminding fans that beauty begins with confidence and compassion. And in the midst of Hollywood's endless conversations about who said what and who did what, her focus remains on what truly lasts: love, family, artistry, connection, and impact. And in that sense, Blake is not alone. She stands among a constellation of stars who have chosen to redefine fame on their own terms. Take Taylor Swift, for example, another powerhouse who turned media storms into melodies and pain into poetry, creating anthems for a generation about healing and self-discovery. And like Blake, she knows that fame can be both fragile and fierce, but she also knows how to steer that energy towards something beautiful, something that endures through eras and evolutions. And then there's Zendaya, whose quiet confidence and effortless versatility have transformed her into a global icon. She too understands that staying grounded amid glamour requires both humility and intention. And so as the entertainment world buzzes with new stories and digital noise, these women remind us that sometimes the loudest message comes from silence, from letting your work, your kindness, and your consistency speak for you. And as we travel further through this world of celebrities, we see patterns of resilience written into their lives. From Rihanna's journey, from small island girl to global mogul building an empire rooted in inclusivity and creativity, to Beyoncé's meticulous artistry that redefined what it means to be a performer. These women, along with Blake, embody a new kind of celebrity, one that values grace, more than gossip, and purpose, more than perception. And the fascinating part about Blake's story is how she manages to maintain her charm even when the world wants to dissect every gesture, every dress, every social media post. She carries herself like someone who knows that the truth does not need to shout because it stands on its own. And that message reverberates beyond Hollywood, reaching fans across the world who see her not just as a celebrity, but as a symbol of authenticity and strength. And in a time when everyone is watching everyone else through a screen, Blake's story becomes a mirror reflecting what we all crave. A reminder that being genuine still matters, that living with intention still inspires. And as her team and peers continue to speak on truth and clarity, it feels less like a statement and more like a movement, a quiet collective call for honesty and empathy in an age of narratives and headlines. And so this part of her journey is not about defense or denial. It is about defining your own story before someone else writes it for you. It's about artists around the world reclaiming their voice and reminding us that behind every image is a human heart, beating with dreams, fears, and courage, and that is where the real story lives, in the spaces between the rumors, in the resilience that follows misunderstanding, in the unwavering belief that grace will always outshine gossip. And through it all, Blake Lively stands radiant and steady, her story interwoven with others who share her path, building something larger than fame, a legacy of truth, kindness, and authenticity that will echo long after the noise fades. And as the story unfolds further, we find ourselves moving deeper into the heart of what fame truly means. Because when you look at someone like Blake Lively, you realize that her light is not just a product of Hollywood's camera flashes, it's something that comes from within, something earned through years of hard work, dedication, and a refusal to compromise her values, even when it would have been easier to play along with the game. She has become a master of balance, walking the tightrope between public life and private peace, all while maintaining a genuine connection with fans who admire her for her talent and her truth. And in that sense, she represents a new era of celebrity, one built not on perfection, but on purpose. And this is something we see reflected across the entertainment landscape when Taylor Swift takes the stage. She transforms her personal struggles into songs that feel like confessions of the collective heart when Zendaya speaks about the challenges of growing up in an industry that often misunderstands youth and vulnerability. She does so with the kind of eloquence that turns pain into poetry. When Selena Gomez opens up about mental health and healing, she turns her vulnerability into strength, showing millions that being open about struggle is not weakness, but courage. And Blake fits perfectly into this tapestry of resilience, using her influence to highlight not just fashion or beauty, but the inner strength that defines real powers. Collaborates with brands that reflect her ethics. She supports causes that elevate women's voices. She gives her audience a reflection of what it means to live with both elegance and edge. And beyond that, she carries herself as someone who knows the weight of words, who understands that every headline carries energy and every image tells a story. And in that awareness, she finds her grace. And it's that same energy that connects her with others who have shaped modern celebrity culture. Figures like Rihanna, who built her empire on unapologetic individuality, or Beyoncé, whose artistic discipline turned her into a symbol of excellence and empowerment. And when we think of these women together, it feels like a shared chorus, a harmony of strength, kindness, and creativity, echoing across red carpets and stages, across interviews and social media feeds across every continent, where fans look for light in their favorite stars. And that's what makes this era of fame so captivating. It's not about who has the most followers or the biggest box office anymore. It's about who can stay real in a world that constantly tries to tell them who to be. And Blake Lively has done exactly that. She has remained true to herself in an industry that thrives on reinvention yet demands authenticity. And while many are swept up in cycles of image and reinvention, she moves like a storyteller. Someone who knows that the most powerful narratives are the ones that whisper, instead of scream, and this kind of quiet confidence is contagious. It spreads to the way fans see themselves, reminding them that you don't have to be flawless to be inspiring. You just have to be honest and present and compassionate, and perhaps that's why she continues to resonate not just as an actress, but as an energy, as a spirit that symbolizes balance between ambition and humanity, between fame and freedom. And as we widen the lens, we see how this energy reflects globally in stars like Blackpink, breaking barriers for women in music, representing a fusion of creativity, discipline, and cultural pride. Or in the way Timothée Chalamet represents a new kind of masculinity, one that embraces vulnerability as much as strength, or even in the stories of athletes like Serena Williams, who prove that perseverance and passion can rewrite history books. These figures all share something in common: a quiet defiance, a decision to let authenticity be their loudest statement. And in that sense, Blake Lively's story becomes part of a greater human story, the story of how truth still shines even in a world built on illusion, how fame can evolve from spectacle into storytelling, and how kindness in the face of chaos can still be the most revolutionary act of all. So as we continue through this journey, we understand that this is not just about celebrity, it's about all of us. Because in watching them, we see reflections of our own courage, our own dreams, our own moments of doubt and hope, and that is the true magic of their world. It's not the lights or the cameras, but the way they remind us that even in the spotlight, we all share the same need to be seen, not for what we appear to be, but for who we truly are. And as we move deeper into this unfolding tapestry, the air of Hollywood shimmers with stories, untold stories, that rise and fall like the tide. Because fame is never still. It moves through time, through whispers, through moments of triumph and turbulence. Yet within that shifting current, there are rare souls like Blake Lively who seem to glide instead of struggle, whose calm demeanor disguises the magnitude of her effort, because staying grounded in the glare of the spotlight is no small task. It takes years of learning to listen to your own voice when everyone else is speaking louder, and that is what makes her journey so fascinating. She doesn't simply navigate fame, she shapes it. She transforms it into something thoughtful and human. And in doing so, she reminds us that even in a world obsessed with perfection, there is immense beauty in sincerity. And what makes this moment in her story so powerful is how it connects to others who have walked similar paths. You see the same. Grace reflected in figures like Emma Watson, who turned her platform from film into advocacy-building conversations about equality and education, or in someone like Lady Gaga, whose vulnerability became her armor, transforming pain into art and inspiration. These individuals, like Blake, have found a way to merge the personal and the public to take their visibility and make it meaningful beyond performance. They become vessels for empathy, and that empathy ripples outward, touching millions who may never meet them but feel seen because of them. And perhaps that is the real secret behind lasting fame. It's not just talent or timing, but the ability to connect deeply and truthfully. And in that way, Blake's story mirrors the rise of this new kind of celebrity culture, one that values depth over spectacle and grace over gossip, where moments of honesty become more viral than scandal, and where using your voice to uplift others becomes the new definition of cool, because the world has changed. Audiences have changed. Fans no longer just want fantasy. They crave connection and authenticity, and Blake has mastered that balance, appearing effortlessly elegant, yet always approachable, blending the glamour of the red carpet with the warmth of a friend's conversation. She posts glimpses of her real life in ways that remind people that celebrities, too, are just people who laugh, love, struggle, and hope. And in that vulnerability lies her greatest strength. It's the same thread that ties her to others who continue to redefine fame, like Zendaya, whose every public moment feels intentional and grounded in respect, or like Harry Styles, who uses fashion and music as languages of self-expression, encouraging others to live boldly and freely, or like Rihanna, who revolutionized the beauty industry, not by chasing trends, but by demanding inclusivity so that everyone could see themselves reflected in the glow of success. These are not just stars, they are storytellers of a new era, each of them echoing the same message that Blake carries through her quiet resilience: that compassion can coexist with ambition, that kindness can still shine brighter than chaos, and that being true to yourself is still the most radical thing you can do in a world that profits from pretense. And as we zoom out, we start to see how this collective shift in celebrity culture mirrors the changes in all of us, because the lines between fans and icons blur in this age of digital intimacy, where we can see and speak directly to those we admire, where stories of perseverance from actors, musicians, athletes, and artists inspire new generations to dream bigger, but stay grounded. And perhaps that's what makes Blake Lively's story so universally resonant. It's not just about Hollywood, it's about humanity. It's about how even those who seem to have everything still face moments of doubt, misunderstanding, and challenge, and how they find ways to rise not by fighting louder, but by standing taller, by embodying grace, by choosing to lead with heart. And as we think of her journey, intertwined with so many others, we begin to see a pattern forming a mosaic of courage, where each piece represents a story of endurance and evolution. And together they remind us that the true power of fame lies not in visibility, but in vulnerability, and that sometimes the greatest influence comes not from what you say, but from how you live. And in that living, Blake Lively has quietly written one of the most inspiring chapters in modern celebrity history. And as the curtain rises on the next act of this vast Hollywood narrative, we see Blake Lively continuing to walk through it all with that same unshakable poise that has made her a figure of quiet fascination, because the more the world evolves, the more we see that fame is no longer about distance, but about connection. And Blake understands that deeply. She connects through style, through humor, through family, through every carefully chosen project that reflects not just what she can do, but what she stands for, and her sense of self becomes a lesson in authenticity. For an audience that has grown weary of facades, she proves that being real is far more magnetic than being perfect. And that message is echoed in the new generation of creatives rising all around her, from Florence Pugh, who boldly embraces her individuality and vulnerability, to Timothée Chalamet, whose artful sensitivity redefines masculinity for a modern age, from Zendaya, who commands every screen with quiet power, to Emma Stone, whose laughter and honesty cut through the noise of fame. These stars, like Blake, are part of a cultural wave that values truth over illusion and kindness over calculation, and their shared authenticity becomes a thread that binds them into something larger than celebrity. It becomes a movement, one that stretches across borders, across languages, across industries, because this isn't just happening in Hollywood, it's global. You see it in K-pop, where artists like BTS speak openly about mental health and self-love, using music to inspire healing rather than perfection. You see it in European cinema, where actors like Penelope Cruz and Daniel Bruhl champion stories that explore the real human heart. You see it in the way African artists like Burna Boy and teams celebrate identity and heritage, reminding the world that art is most powerful when it is unapologetically authentic. And somewhere within all these echoes, Blake stands as a reminder of longevity. She has seen the waves of fame rise and fall, and through it all, she remains steady, because she knows that her worth isn't measured in headlines or hashtags. It's written in the way she treats people, in the projects she nurtures, in the legacy she's building beyond the screen. And that's what makes her story so emotionally rich. It's not about escaping the spotlight. It's about using it wisely, about reflecting the light back onto others. And she's not alone in that mission. Take Angelina Jolie, whose humanitarian work continues to change lives across the globe, or Leonardo DiCaprio, whose environmental advocacy has made him a voice for a planet in peril, or Rihanna, whose Fenty empire is built on representation and empowerment. Each of them has learned that the truest form of influence is service, and that's the same lesson Blake embodies in her quiet way. Her every move seems to whisper that success means little if it doesn't make someone else's world brighter. And that is perhaps the most revolutionary idea in modern fame to give. Instead of take to listen, instead of perform to uplift, instead of compete. And this shift in energy has changed the entire atmosphere of celebrity culture, transforming it into something more human, more collaborative, more conscious. And we see that reflected in the growing number of stars who use their visibility not to boast, but to bridge the gap between glamour and reality, between artistry and activism. And this evolution is powerful because it shows us that even within the glittering world of fame, there is space for humility and heart. And that's what keeps audiences engaged. Not the drama, not the spectacle, but the sincerity. And it's in that space that Blake thrives. She has learned to navigate the industry with humor and heart, to balance creativity with compassion, to handle the inevitable waves of misunderstanding with the grace of someone who knows that truth always finds its way to the surface. And that is why her name endures. She isn't just a headline. She's a heartbeat, a steady presence in a chaotic landscape, reminding us all that fame without foundation fades, but integrity endures. And as she continues to evolve, so too does Hollywood, following the quiet example of those who have chosen purpose over pretense and light over noise. And in that evolution, we see hope, a new blueprint for what it means to be famous, not as a symbol, but as a story that inspires. You said. And as we arrive at this final chapter, the light of Blake Lively's story glows warmer. Not from the flash of cameras, but from the quiet admiration of those who have followed her journey from the beginning. Because what began as a young actress, stepping into the unpredictable world of fame, has transformed into the portrait of a woman who understood early on that the truest kind of success is measured not by applause, but by impact. And as the years unfold, she stands not just as a star, but as a storyteller weaving lessons of grace, resilience, and authenticity into the larger narrative of Hollywood itself. And in that tapestry, her story blends effortlessly with those of others who have redefined what it means to shine. Taylor Swift continues to build worlds out of words, showing that reinvention can coexist with integrity. Zendaya's humility and power remind us that age does not limit wisdom. Rihanna proves that creativity and courage can transform industries. Beyoncé's mastery and discipline teach us that excellence is a form of love, and figures like Selena Gomez show that healing is a lifelong art. And in all these stories, Blake's voice echoes quietly through the noise, as if to say that fame is fleeting, but character is eternal. She has become a symbol for those who dream with open eyes, for those who chase success but refuse to lose themselves in the process, for those who believe that kindness and confidence can live side by side. And as we trace her path, we begin to see the larger pattern, not just of one woman's success, but of a cultural shift happening in real time, where celebrity is no longer about distance, but about depth, where influence is measured by authenticity, and where the greatest compliment a star can receive is that they made someone feel seen and valued. And this shift is what makes this generation of public figures so remarkable. They are not idols on pedestals, but mirrors held up to the human experience. They share their flaws, their laughter, their lessons, their heartache. And in doing so, they blur the line between icon and individual, between story and storyteller. And this connection between celebrities and their audiences becomes a kind of symbiosis, where inspiration flows both ways. The fans lift the stars as much as the stars lift their fans. And that mutual energy is what keeps the entire system alive and evolving. It's what allows a figure like Blake Lively to continue to resonate after all these years, because she represents something timeless. She represents the beauty of being steadfast and sincere in a world built on motion and illusion. She represents the quiet strength it takes to rise above misunderstanding, and the courage it takes to live truthfully when the world insists on fiction, and that lesson ripples beyond Hollywood. It reaches into boardrooms, classrooms, studios, and homes across the world, reminding everyone that even when you cannot control the story being told about you, You can always control the story you live. And that is the lesson that carries through every era of fame, from Marilyn Monroe's haunting vulnerability to Audrey Hepburn's enduring kindness, from Princess Diana's empathy to Michelle Obama's grounded wisdom, from Oprah Winfrey's generosity to Greta Gerwig's artistry. The thread that connects them all is not perfection, but purpose. And as this era unfolds, we see that same purpose being born anew in young voices who are reshaping music, film, and art with fearless authenticity. Stars like Olivia Rodrigo, who turns adolescence into Anthem, or Bad Bunny, who breaks cultural barriers with unapologetic self-expression, or Blackpink, who bring unity and empowerment to millions across continents, or Timothée Chalamet, who finds power in softness and style in sincerity. These names and countless others are proof that the future of fame is in good hands, because it is guided by those who believe that success and soul do not have to be separate. And as we close the chapter on this journey, we return once more to Blake. Lively, standing at the heart of it all, her laughter soft but strong, her presence as vibrant as ever, her message clear that fame is not about the noise you make, but the peace you keep within yourself. That true glamour comes not from what you wear, but from how you treat people. That legacy is not a story written for you, but a story you choose to tell, with kindness, courage, and conviction. And as the world continues to evolve and the headlines rise and fade like waves, one thing remains constant: the quiet grace of those who stand for truth in a world addicted to spectacle. And that is what makes Blake Lively's story so enduring. Not the glitter or the gossip, but the golden thread of humanity she carries through it all, reminding us that in the end, fame fades, fashion changes, and stories evolve, but character, the real kind, shines forever. If you love motivational storytelling, celebrity journeys, and cinematic narratives that feel like a friend talking to your heart, this video is for you. Comment below your favorite celebrity story and tell us who inspires you most. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss more inspiring documentaries.